trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, he died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee, Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking out. Yes.
But I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should be running.
This is not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence: a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean,
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007, before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
and now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome. Thank you for joining me on this beautiful Sunday afternoon, I guess, which happens to be my birthday. Thank you very much. I'm not the kind of person that makes a big deal about that, but today is my birthday, so show me some love. I'm getting old. I am 47 years old today. Thank you very much. I have no problem making that known. I'm not ashamed of it. I think I'm in better shape, honestly, at 47 than I've been probably in most of my life. So enough about that. There is a ton of stuff I want to talk about today, and we need to get through it all. So I'm not going to waste too much time with any of the formalities here. We are going to get right into it. There's a lot of, so as you know, the TPUSA event was just held this weekend, and there's a lot of news coming out of that. The biggest news being, I think, what is the end of Ben Shapiro as a conservative voice. Let me adjust my mic a little bit here. Make sure that this bad boy's I shouldn't say the end of him as a conservative voice, but I think kind of the end of him as having much influence, if any, as a conservative voice, and I'm about to show you why that is. But a couple great things are going on. It's interesting, and I'm going to go through a lot of the proofs I have for this, but just to kind of summarize where I'm at with things politically. And I say this a lot, but I really do feel like, you know, when you're the type of president like Donald Trump is, whether you agree with the guy or not, who's actually trying to alter things on any level, even if they're things that you might not agree with, you're trying to make fundamental change to the status quo. You are pushing against a gigantic boulder that's trying to roll back on you, you know, at every second of the day. And so I take a lot of the kind of reporting on Trump and Vance with a grain of salt, especially the stuff that's partisan, clearly partisan, you know, through the partisan lens. And to give you an example of that, the Epstein thing, for example, I'm not saying the Epstein thing isn't a scandal. I'm not saying the Trump administration hasn't done completely stupid shit, you know, like giving out the portfolio, the binders, and pretending that, you know, after they ran on, hey, we got to release the files and Epstein didn't kill himself, getting into power and going like, oh no, he totally did kill himself. That's ridiculous. You know, that part of it, definitely. But I feel like it's so evident to me that the Democrats can see that this is a problem for Trump, and that's why they're pushing it. Whereas when Biden was president, they didn't give a shit about the Epstein files, and they had the power then to release them. So it's clear to me that, you know, because a lot of them are implicated in it too, you know, so it's not, so it's, and again, so what I'm saying here is it's not one of those things that I don't think is an issue, but it's one of those things that I can see pretty clearly is being kind of, you know, manipulated within the view of the public because it's a problem for Trump. You know, people, it makes him look bad to his base. And so I see a lot of that dynamic with a lot of the reporting going on. And we're going to talk about it later. He's going to reschedule marijuana as a Schedule III drug. There's a lot of pushback on that from the right. And so kudos to him for sticking to that. But, you know, you kind of see this type of stuff happening slowly but surely. And I really do feel like there is a divide within the Trump administration. And just like any administration that comes in, there's these the deep state, you know, I like, as Steve Bannon called it, the steady state, the people who are, Dick Cheney is a great example of this career kind of animal. Dick Cheney was a appointee in multiple administrations going all the way back to Nixon. You know, he worked for Nixon, he worked for Bush 1, he worked for Reagan. He is a creature of the deep state. And then he weaseled his way into the vice presidency and did all kinds of corrupt shit. So and I'm not, again, I think sometimes when you make these kind of nuanced arguments, people are like, oh, you're defending Trump. No, I'm not defending Trump. What I'm saying is, even if he's a faction of another faction of the corrupt bullshit, you can see what's going on where trying to change something is met with this instant pushback, this really hard pushback by those kind of entrenched powers. And so I think I give him a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt. And I always say this, but I'm going to say it again. Put yourself in the position where Bernie Sanders gets elected. Any Democrat, Obama, look at Obama. When Obama ran, there's a meme about this, Democrats when they run versus Democrats when they get elected. But when Obama ran, he was like, I'm going to reform healthcare. I'm going to codify Roe v. Wade. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then he gets in and he governs like a Republican. And I think part of that, the reasoning behind that is these forces. Once you get into the government, they're like, yeah, all that stuff you said? Well, we ain't changing shit, dude. This is how it is when you get to the inside. And we're just going to keep things moving the way we like it, okay? You're not shaking anything up. So I think that dynamic is at play, definitely, when it comes to this administration. And you can see the forces aligned behind preventing these changes. And those forces might be Republican. They might be Democrat. They're status quo uniparty forces. Now, again, this is not a defense of Trump or any of the stupid shit he's done, because he has done a lot of stupid shit. The shit he said about Rob Reiner the other day, for example, is like, what, dude? Do you really have to do that? I mean, there's a point when you can just go, look, we may have disagreed on stuff, but it's a tragedy what happened to Rob Reiner and his family. You don't have to do this rant about Trump derangement and make it political when a guy's fan. And most decent people, even a lot of people to their credit on the right, came out and said this. Even Nick Fuentes, surprisingly, I liked what Nick Fuentes said, actually. He's like, look, if Trump was like actually doing the things he ran on and like going after the deep state and like, closing the border, like making sure that people are getting jobs, or like, lowering the prices in the economy, people might be able to deal with the fact that he's a complete douchebag, on Twitter or on Truth Social or whatever. But since he's not doing that, it's just like, insult to injury type thing, where it's like, okay, dude, like, not only are you not doing any of the shit that people voted for, but you're also a piece of shit just on a superficial level, That said, I'm curious what you guys see out there in the economy as far as grocery prices go, because I have noticed recently the price of my groceries has kind of gone down a little bit. Coffee being a big example. For the last couple months, I've been paying like 20. I buy coffee beans, by the bag, because I grind my own. I'm very particular about my coffee. So I buy coffee, beans, like whole beans. And I'm very specific about it. So I buy the same thing every couple weeks. And a couple weeks ago, it was like $21, $22 for a bag of coffee. Last time I bought a bag of coffee, it was like $16, $17. The same exact brand, the same exact beans. So that's quite a drop. Same with eggs. I've noticed the type of eggs that I get. So it's something that I buy very regularly. The price has kind of dipped a little bit. So, again, you gotta kind of let these things ride a little bit and see where they're going. So with that said, today's cover story, ladies and gentlemen, Ben Shapiro. I'm not going to play my Ben Shapiro Wet Ass Pussy remix, but if you haven't seen it, it's top tier. I basically took him reading the lyrics on his show and put it over the beat and like made it like he's actually like singing the song. He's like, you guys, this is what feminism has become, you guys. This is what feminism. It doesn't, it's just about wet ass pussy. That's what feminism is, guys. But I take extreme joy in seeing the downfall of Ben Shapiro, and his downfall is clear. It's over for Ben Shapiro, as we're about to go through the point by point, each nail in his coffin. But the reason I take joy in this is because he's a fucking fake. It's not because he's Jewish. It's not because he's conservative. It's not because he's right wing or any of these fucking dead paradigm, fucking labels that people have that mean nothing in today's ecosystem. Mean nothing. Left and right mean nothing today. Let's be honest. Republican and Democrat mean nothing in the modern political dialogue. But Ben Shapiro was a dishonest actor. He's a guy who gets on his fucking show and just lies flat out on behalf of interests that, pay him, whether it's directly or through kickbacks or through property in Tel Aviv, who knows. But it's been clear for a long time that he's a dishonest actor. And the way you know that is because he violates his own deeply held principles. Back when it was, trans people need a safe space and we're not going to pretend that you're a woman because so blah, 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 blah. We're not going to, now that dynamic is being applied to be Jewish people or people that support Israel. I shouldn't even say Jewish people because most of the protesters for Gaza on the side, most of the Gaza protests are organized by Jewish people. So this isn't even, they want to make it a like, you hate Jewish people or it's Jewish people versus everyone else type thing when it's not that. It's Zionists versus everyone else. And there are a lot of fucking Zionists that might call themselves Jewish, but they really ain't living the doctrines. Let's be honest. Same thing dynamic with conservative Christians. There's a lot of conservatives out there that pretend that they're Christian. And, you look at the way they live their life and it's kind of like, I don't know. And this is a dynamic I grew up around because I grew up in Utah around the Mormons. And I watched these people who are pious to the core, and no disrespect to the Mormons. There's a lot of good Mormons. Well, I have a lot of good family members that are Mormons and everything, but there's a culture as a child in the 90s where, there's these dudes I worked with or went to school with that were out fucking drinking lean and fucking robbing cars and stuff on Saturday night. And then passing the collection plate at the Mormon church on Sunday morning. We called those Jack Mormons, the fakes. And that to me is what a lot of the Zionists are in relation to the Jewish faith. So Candace Owens, we're going to start with her because she, I believe right now, is the premier voice of the conservative, movement. She's kind of broken through to the mainstream. Even if you disagree with Candace, you can't help but love her attitude and her integrity. And again, going back to this whole partisan mindset, I feel like with Candace Owens, even there's this real attitude. There's a real tendency for people to go at her from a partisan angle based on these with the Tim Pool, Candace Owens thing recently, when she did the meeting with Erica Kirk, for example, a lot of people came out and said like, there's a big backlash against her because she sat down with Erica Kirk and now she's going to go soft. And when I saw that, I went, this is the angle they're going to use to try and make people not watch Candace. Like this is clearly the enemies of Candace botting up her audience and like pretending like her audience is defecting when it's really just an operation that they're doing. Another way they're attempting to try and discredit her. And a lot of podcaster people, on the left and right kind of bought into that. Like, look at the backlash against Candace Owens. Like, no, there's no backlash against all Candace Owens is doing is asking questions and being honest. But I say this because I believe she is the kind of, her and Tucker are obviously, very obviously the voices, the mainstream voices, the leaders, the thought leaders of the conservative movement at this point, which fucking amazing. Like, again, I don't agree with Candace Owens on like George Floyd and pornography. And there's a bunch of stuff I could cite that I disagree with Candace Owens on fundamentally. And I would sit down and argue with her about it. Pornography, keep it away from your kids. I'm fine with, there should be protections on it from kids, but it's a form of free speech. And for you to deny that is to act like, you're just like the people who want to silence you on Gaza or some other thing that you're talking, or Brigitte's dick or any of that kind of stuff. You can't, you're failing on your principles when you start doing that kind of stuff. But that's a whole other debate for a whole other time. Candace really went after Ben Shapiro. And I'm going to start with this because I just have a long list of people in the conservative movement now who went after Ben Shapiro, and rightfully so. Before we show you all that, I do want to start with, okay, hold on a sec. I'm going to, let me back up just a little bit here. Let me back up just a little bit because I want to reset this a little bit by talking about the FBI. Okay. So staying on the theme of Candace Owens here, Charlie Kirk, the past year of kind of political mainstream dialogue. What is the kind of dividing line here in this debate about Charlie Kirk, right? What is it? It is this. You're in one of two camps. You accept the Fed narrative that Tyler Robinson shot Charlie Kirk because he's an angry trans activated leftist who said Charlie Kirk was hateful, or you have some questions. Those are the two camps completely. Because even on the Candace, you have some questions side, no one is making any definitive claims. No one's saying, well, it was definitely like it's a game of Clue, like Erica Kirk did it in the study with the fucking, Israeli Mossad or something. This is all speculation. And no one in that camp is claiming to have the answers. On the other side of that, though, you have the people who are like, Tyler fucking Robinson did it. And if you have any questions, shut the fuck up. You're dividing us and we're going to lose the election because of you. That's it, right? So this is a tweet from Max Blumenthal about this FBI that we're supposed to trust. This narrative about Tyler Robinson on. So this is recent. Let's zoom in on this like a little bit. I love Max here. Another terror plot manufactured by the FBI, which relied on a well-paid confidential human informant to justify repression of leftist protest groups. The targets here operated a recently created IG account with less than 1,000 followers. So let's dig back in this. So what Bondi's saying, after an intense investigation, the Department of Justice, working with our FBI, prevented what would have been a massive and horrific terror plot in the Central District of California, the Turtle Island Liberation Front. This sounds like a Monty Python skit. A far left, pro-Palestine, anti-government, and anti-capitalist group was preparing to conduct a series of bombings against multiple targets in California, beginning on New Year's Eve. The group has also planned to target ICE agents and vehicles. This was an incredible effort by U.S. attorneys' offices and the FBI. Look at Elon Musk. This is my reply to Elon Musk here. Elon Musk, yay, FBI. Anyway, so Max has kind of exposed how this was just like Gretchen Whitmer, just like the 6th of a certain month, this is a manufactured FBI scheme. The seemingly manufactured plot also involved an FBI undercover employee you see placing free Palestine stickers beside the bomb making components, minus the end caps necessary for pipe bombs. It was a nice touch. So this is the kind of shit. So, okay, so you see this kind of stuff. And this is the kind of bullshit that the FBI is manufacturing currently. And the people that are mad at Candace Owens are like, no, you need to believe those people. That's the argument. That's it. And again, it has nothing to do with whether you like Candace or not, or whether you think she's right or not. She's not making any definitive claims. She's just asking questions that don't coincide with this guy definitely did it crowd. So, that aside, let's get into what Candace had to say recently about Ben Shapiro, because this was kind of the first real, shot across the bow, I guess, as far as I'm concerned.
Clear as legal abuse. It's legal abuse. And I have put up with a lot of it. I have put up with the pettiness of even suing me because I interviewed a USS Liberty survivor who mentioned your name as you pretend that you care about free speech and debate. I've put up with a lot of it, but today I draw the line. I draw the line with this miserable imp when it comes to Charlie Kirk. Okay? Don't try me on this, but you keep trying me on this. You are an imposter, Ben. You're an imposter. You pay to pretend that you're friends, that you have a right to be on that stage because you get donors to pressure people, because you know Jewish people who can threaten to take money, or you say, I'm going to do an advertising spend. Here's $1 million. I'm sorry, you're dead. The entire world knows that you are an imposter. I mean, you're so much of a fraud that essentially what you do is you have people send around clips to grown men to cheer you on, to pretend like the audiences love you. You staff audiences with people that work for YAF who are told to explode into cheers when you hit the stage because you don't have the confidence anymore to go out into the world because you know people see you for what you are. And so it exactly what he did yesterday. We can now listen to what this imposter said as he hit the stage. Charlie Kirk's organization, the one that he built for debate, if you have a disagreement, and he instructs people here in this speech, go after me and Tucker Carlson, right? That's what he's going to do.
So quick sidebar here. To summarize this argument, this phrase popped into my head: billions of dollars versus the truth. Because as she's kind of outlining, that's what Ben has always had behind him, is this illusion, all this money to buy the illusion that a lot of people agree with him. And in the age of the internet, that doesn't stand up anymore. And that's why these people are clawing so intensely to regain control of the mainstream media. That's why Larry Ellison bought CBS and Paramount, and that's why they're trying to buy, everything's consolidating. But as I said before, that's like buying the Titanic. It's over. And it's over for Ben. And this gets better. But let me let Candace finish. Let me let her play this clip of Ben.
He wants us deplatformed.
Really go in.
So he's going to attack me. He's going to attack Tucker Carlson. And he's going to attack Megyn Kelly because she's at the beginning of what these people have put me and Tucker and Charlie Kirk through. Take a listen to a portion of what Ben had to say.
So, if Candace Owens decides to spend every day since the murder of Charlie Kirk casting aspersions at TPUSA and the people who work here, who worked with Charlie every single day, his best friends, to cast aspersions at Mikey McCoy and Andrew Colvin and Blake Neff and Tyler Boyer, and yes, at Erica Kirk, and to imply or outright claim complicity in a cover-up over Charlie's murder, to spew absolutely baseless trash implicating everyone from French intelligence to Mossad to members of TPUSA in Charlie's murder or a cover-up in that murder, then
there's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. Hold up. I said certified freak 7 days of the week. Wet ass P word. Make that pullout game weak. Yeah, you effing with some wet ass P word.
Sorry, I couldn't help it. I had to bring that into the mix here, but let's get back to the original. Let's get back to our original broadcast here.
On Candace's targeting of TPUSA.
Yeah, you effing with some wet ass P word.
Or to mirror her bullshit lines of questioning because you love Candace personally. The same holds true of Megyn Kelly, a person I consider a friend, characterizing Candace as a young mother and thus shying away from condemning her actions or fibbing about them. That is a non-starter.
That's Ben Shapiro, Karen Shapiro up here.
Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P word. Give me everything you got for this wet ass P word. Beat it up, N word. Catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard.
Sorry. Let me let Candace finish here.
When Candace Owens says, I don't know, but I know, that is retarded. And we are all more retarded for having heard it.
Well, Ben, when it comes to you and having worked with you, I just know the tactics that you use to feign popularity in the public. I just know the amount of money that you are willing to spend on advertising to inflate your numbers to make people think that you're popular. So, yeah, I don't have to say we don't know when it comes to you. You are such a joke of a little man. Your jealousy against Tucker, your ability to believe that you can keep manipulating the markets. You know those kids booed you on that stage. The amount of messages I got from Turning Point USA people saying, what is happening? Why is he on this stage? Standing against everything that Charlie believed in. That's what you're doing. You're standing against everything that Charlie believed in because you weren't his friend. He didn't like you for that very reason. I look at you and I just think you are such a little worm. I could see you right now, probably. What can we get out to her? We're going to sue her into bankruptcy again, right? Sue her for every infraction, every word that I don't like, and every time my feelings are hurt. Because what you really believe in is Baal Berith. That's what your people believe in. You believe that you are contract lords and that people are not allowed to violate contracts or you will ruin them for years. You fire someone and you effectively stalk and harass them for years after.
Full disclaimer, I don't know if what she's saying here is true. So it does border on a little like stuff that I'm not sure about. So
I'm here to let you know that I'm done with it.
But I love
am
this.
done with it. This one is so fully off of the mother effing plantation. Truly, Ben Shapiro, fuck you and the midget horse that you rode in on. And I say that on behalf of the world. I know you're going to get applauded by Konstantin Kisin and Andrew Christ is King Clavin and all of the people, the men who have to keep applauding what you do like you're a 4-year-old to make you feel good. But the rest of the world can't stand you. You're obnoxious. You have absolutely no values that exist outside of the Talmud. You describe yourself as a Talmudic Jew, and I've learned what's in that Talmud, and I encourage other people at home to learn what is in that Talmud so that you know what Ben thinks of you, because he doesn't just hate me, he hates you too, white men. He hates all Black people, okay? If he's following the rules of the Talmud, I mean, when I say hates, they think that we're animals, that they have a right to own us, that they have a right to make us worship them, that they have a right to lie to us, that they have a right to sue us and take everything that we have, that they have a right to deceive us, that they have a right to treat Charlie the way that he treated Charlie while he was alive, only to then try to defraud the population into thinking that he is somehow a part of his legacy, that he somehow cared about Charlie Kirk and cares to protect the people that are working at Turning Point USA. Goodbye, Ben. Goodbye.
we'll stop there. That is pretty fucking hardcore. Props to Candace. Oh, goddess of the podcast world, Candace Owens. And again, people try to act like, oh, Candace's audience is just a bunch of dummies, mystery followers or whatever. No, Candace's audience are people who can see that she is someone who speaks with integrity. She's been canceled by these people. You forget she was ejected from the Daily Wire for asking questions. I was going to do quotes, but that's what she was doing. I don't need to do quotes around that. She was asking questions, and they ejected her from that. And then, just like Nick Fuentes, just like Tucker Carlson, just like this is the thing that the voices, if you think about this, the current ascendant voices in the conservative movement have all been canceled by the mainstream media and their acolytes and the people that, are losing their minds right now over the Epstein files. And again, I don't think that the Epstein files is a non-issue, but it's very clearly a partisan thing. So moving on to Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson followed Ben Shapiro at the Turning Point event and also went in on him. Basically just kind of, I'm glad Candace showed that clip because I didn't want to dig it up. But let's show you Tucker's response now to Ben's little speech.
Word right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Hop on top if I want to ride. I do a Kegel while it's inside. Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes. This P word is wet, come take a dive.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
I'm not going to engage in that. If someone doesn't like what I think, fine with me, as long as I get to express it. That's my view. But since we're on the topic, I think I should take the opportunity to explain why Charlie was under all this pressure. And I think Erica, who I just saw backstage, and whom I love, and who I can tell you is totally committed to continuing the core principle of Charlie's public life, which is the right of every person to express what he believes. That is rooted in Christian faith. We believe people should be able to say what they think because they have souls. They're human beings. created by God. They are not slaves. They are not animals. They are not objects. You cannot tell another human being to shut up, even shut up racists.
If you go by Citizens United, though, remember, as Mitt Romney said, corporations are people too. So they have all these rights, apparently.
Because you don't own him. He is an independent, autonomous person created by God as an individual. Okay, so that's where that belief comes from. That's where free speech comes from. And there's no accident. This is the only country in the world that protects it, because our founding documents were informed, as you just heard so nicely expressed by Michael Knowles, my friend, by people who self-consciously incorporated Christian precepts into their structure of government. So Charlie was committed to that, but the people around him were like, you can't, because it's not that Carlson's wrong. My only point was I don't want a land war with Iran. I got over my skis and said I didn't want another regime change war with Iran. Rather than explain why we should have a regime change war with Iran, which I'd be happy to listen to, he's an anti-Semite. He's an anti-Semite. Which I said, well, obviously that's not true. And Charlie said, I know. And then it just didn't stop. So I continued to say, I'm not an anti-Semite.
You're
don't
an
care what you
anti-Semite.
say, you're lying, you are. So let me just affirm one final time, not only am I not an anti-Semite, and would say so if I was.
You're an anti-Semite.
I'm not an anti-Semite for a very specific reason. Not because it's unpopular or my donors don't like it. I don't have any donors. I'm not an anti-Semite because anti-Semitism is immoral. In my religion, it is immoral to hate people for how they were born. Period. But that is not a limited principle. That is a universal principle. It applies to every human being on planet Earth. You may not, you are prohibited by my religion, which is Christianity, from hating people for how they were born. Because God created them with his spark in his image. Because they have souls. You can disagree with them. You can hate their ideas. You may even find yourself, and I do, I'll confess it, hating them for a moment. But you can't hate everyone who's like them. You can't punish people for crimes they didn't commit. That's the basis of our justice system. That's the basis of Christian ethics. That's why we have what are called human rights. They apply to every human, not just your group, not just my group, but every human, because we don't consider people in terms of the groups to which they belong. We consider them as individuals the way that God created them.
I will say this too, and I argued this long before I had a political podcast, and I had to mute my mic for a second because someone was revving their engine up. But I've long argued that the strength of the United States is this, what Tucker is describing, that we look at the individual rather than, their ethnic group or their, background or whatever. If you're an American citizen, you're an American citizen. It doesn't matter if you're an African American, an Asian American, a white American, a Mexican American, whatever. And I do think that's one of the reasons historically America was powerful, but obviously we've declined quite a bit. But let me let Tucker finish here.
So anti-Semitism is not just naughty, it's immoral.
You're an anti-Semite.
And it is precisely as immoral as hating any other group. And that would include other groups in the United States that are hated and have been under attack for decades. And that would include white men who did nothing to become white men. They were born that way. And just because you have a beef with a white man, let's just say Donald Trump, doesn't mean you get to punish all the rest of the white men in the country. And yet, our leaders, not just of our Congress, the executive branch under Biden, but of every major US corporation, of every college in the country, probably except Hillsdale and 2 others, every single one for more than 10 years has engaged in a systematic effort to hurt white men because they are white men. That is racism that is precisely as bad as anti-Semitism, but it is much more widespread and has been so far much more damaging.
I don't necessarily agree with all that. Although I will say, like, listen, I'm a white guy and I've never felt persecuted or anywhere near the type of, systemic racism I've seen my brothers of other racial backgrounds go through. And I grew up in a small town. My best friends were not white. So I've experienced this vicariously, just, like the things that people in small town America would say to us when I was with them, or the things that would happen to me. I got arrested one time because we smelled like weed, where I had gone into this same gas station multiple times and no one said a word. But because I was with a bunch of like dark skinned people, they called the fucking cops. Like, oh, they're going to steal something. So anyway, I don't necessarily agree with all that, but I do think it's interesting that everyone is kind of lining up against this censorship regime that's trying to take over. And the reason I'm showing you this stuff is because what I think it illustrates is, going back to what I was talking about at the beginning, there is a power dynamic and a kind of wrestle for power going on right now. And I'm gonna bring a lot of proofs for that as we move further today. But you can see it occurring. The Ben Shapiro represents the status quo in the old guard, and these people that want the Republican Party to stay the kind of like religious conservative, Judeo-Christian type, we're always pro-Israel no matter what thing that it's always been. And the Trump administration and the MAGA movement represents a opposition to that. They're actually trying to change things to be America First priorities. And of course that's racist. That's the opposition to that. But this is not any clearer than the speech that your boy Steve Bannon gave on this stage. And Tucker kind of dances around it a little bit. He I don't think he even calls Ben Shapiro out directly by name. He just kind of calls out the things Ben said. Steve Bannon goes one step further here. And again, I don't agree with everything that Steve says here, but he's been pretty consistent. And I think you need to see this if you missed it, because he really makes it clear what the current divide is in the Republican Party. And he's been on this for a long time, Steve has. If you've watched any of my broadcasts, I've repeatedly shown the debate he had with Mr. David Frum a couple years ago, where David Frum was the liberal, neocon war pig. David Frum was the liberal, and Steve Bannon was the populist. It was a monk debate. And if you haven't seen that, I challenge you to go watch that. But let's listen to what Steve says right around here, because he makes a really good point and it kind of backs up everything I'm saying. It's around like 5:30 here.
Date, because you can already see what they're doing in trying to block President Trump. You see this in Indianapolis. You see this in the redistricting. The Republican establishment think that President Trump's just a passing storm and that he's just going to fade away. And what they're going to try to do is co-opt Turning Point, because Charlie has built it into a massive political operation that cannot be beat. And the left knows that. It's one of the reasons, yes, I realize we haven't gone to trial yet. We don't know all the information. It looks like, at least the information we have out, it may be this guy, maybe not an organization in back of it. We don't know that yet because the evidence hasn't been put out. But Charlie Kirk is dead.
That was really subtle right there, but he just kind of took Candace's side. If you noticed, he's like, we don't have all the evidence. So, but it gets better. So let Steve
think about that. The individual that's probably, I think, at his age, the greatest individual this country's produced politically, culturally, since the revolution. Remember, all of the revolution with 30. Charlie Kirk's, hell, he's 31 years old. He's been doing this since he was 17 or 18. But Charlie Kirk was a man of action. And I want to make sure that we get something straight tonight. We have a partners discussion. And I want to say up front, if I hurt some feelings here, you can come and talk to me afterwards. This whole thing that's gone on the last couple of days, some of the comments tonight, This is not about, this specific incident is not about freedom of speech or platforming or deplatforming. They're all talking about that, and that's, people are saying hurtful things to each other. Tucker said the quiet part out loud. This is a proxy on 28. Now, I think it's way too early to be thinking about 28.
So this is what I was saying again. The Republican establishment is fighting tooth and nail to keep the MAGA people from getting their agenda through. And I think I want to take a quick sidebar here, because what I believe, if you saw the dynamic in what happened the other day with Trump, there was a lot of people that said he was going to announce a war on Venezuela the other night. And then he came on TV and he just like randomly bragged about, he's like, we did this and we're so great and da 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 da. Thank you for your attention. Blah, blah, blah. I'm out. At first I thought, wow, I'm glad he didn't announce a war on Venezuela. But then part of me got to thinking, I wonder if that was a ruse. I wonder if they put that out to kind of trick some of the warmongers in the base into thinking that, because again, there are people in the military and people in his administration, I'm sure, that want this war with Venezuela. You have, the Susie Wiles and the Marco Rubios and the Republican establishment people that are part of this campaign. I'm sure we're put there to help infiltrate MAGA and make it, a standard Republican fare, the establishment, But what Steve gets into right here makes it clear that this dynamic exists and that they're kind of starting to win. They're starting to beat back
significantly more vulgar, like a lot more vulgar. Talk your S word, bite your lip, ask for a call while you ride that D word. This is.
But he's right about one thing. This is a proxy on an issue that's not freedom of speech and not, are you going to get platformed or deplatformed? This is about a situation that Charlie Kirk was probably one of the most, if not the most important person in doing and accomplishing. And that is this concept of what I would call greater Israel and Israel first. You can't get a better defender.
So he starts this by kind of like setting him up. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They're like, look, we're not against Israel. We're just against greater Israel. So listen to what they say.
Of Israel than Charlie Kirk. You can't get a better defender of Israel than Steve Bannon. At Breitbart, adamant, couldn't have a two-state solution. In the White House, I'm the one that pushed initially hard to move the embassy to Jerusalem. At War Room, ask all the War Room people that are here. Ask all the posse. We always talk about it, and we're one state, not a two-state. But that's about Israel. It's not about greater Israel, and it's not about Israel first. Charlie Kirk had some foundational beliefs. Those foundational beliefs are, number one, he's a populist nationalist. America makes its own decisions for America.
Now it's not hard to believe the conspiracy theories that a certain foreign country might have been involved, is it?
And as a populist, the American people are the people that make those decisions. Now, Benji Shapiro sat up here last night.
All right.
And he was all,
This is where he goes in on our boy Benji.
This is what feminists fought for. You really ain't never gonna F him for a thing. He already made his mind up before he came. Now get your boots and your coat for this wet-ass P-word. Pay my tuition just to kiss me on this wet-ass Right, so P-word is female genitalia. This is what the feminist movement was all about.
For that.
It's not, it's not really about, women.
Well, I'm going to, it's all about the truth. Ben, I've known you a long time, brother. You can't handle the truth. Let's face it, Ben Shapiro is the farthest thing from MAGA. Let's be blunt.
Wow. Wow.
He is a hardcore never Trumper. He's a hardcore never Trumper. In the spring.
So again, I'm going to let him finish. I'm going to let you finish, Steve. But this is exactly what I was just outlining. This is the breaking point. This is the split. And it's pretty clear the reason that these people have the White House is because of this split. But I'll go deeper in just a minute. Let me let Steve finish his rant here.
Of 16, he tried to upend Breitbart. He walked off the job, made a big deal about some incident in Mar-a-Lago with Corey Lewandowski. He tried to...
I didn't know all this, but Ben was at Breitbart before too. And so he's done the same. He did the same thing with them that he tried to do with Candace and Charlie.
To turn it to Ted Cruz from Donald Trump because he hated Donald Trump. In the general election, he barely supported Donald Trump. The first sign of when President Trump gets sent back to Mar-a-Lago, the very first individual that jumped on the Ron DeSantis train, the Israel First train, was Ben Shapiro. And those are the darkest days we had. In 21 and 22, you guys were there. He's consistently been against Trump. And now that President Trump doesn't back the Greater Israel Project, what is Greater Israel? It's not about Israel itself. It's about an expansionist Israel, an imperial Israel that Netanyahu and that crowd have thought up. And the Israel First crowd is Ben Shapiro, Tel Aviv Mark Levin, and many others that want to put that.
That right there too is huge news. I think what he just said there, Tel Aviv Mark Levin, he called Mark Levin out. And that's so, I mean, that just shows you this divide here. It's real. And the MAGA people, I think, are winning because despite Charlie Kirk being out of the picture, Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson are still on the stage here. Of course, Ben was too, but it's pretty clear that the audience is with the non-Shapiro crowd.
Ahead of America's interests.
Listen to the audience.
Charlie Kirk fought that. You know where Charlie Kirk fought it? In the White House. I know because I was there. When I went back, Charlie Kirk was working with Sergio Gore, certain people around the vice president, to make sure that we didn't get sucked into a land war, a decapitation of the Iranian elites that would lead to a massive civil war that American troops would get sucked into, because that was Netanyahu's plan from the beginning. And we know that. The Times of Israel has published that there was no urgency to go after the nuclear weapons. We know the fact they couldn't finish what they started. We know for a fact that they needed American Aegis, THAAD missiles, Patriots to defend themselves. On day 10 of the war, they were losing, and they didn't have the offensive capability.
Wow, that's also news. Him admitting that. I saw a piece that Jackson Hinkle did recently where they were saying that they believed the reason that Trump bombed Iran is because Israel threatened to use nukes. And so they thought, okay, we'll appease them by letting them do this bombing campaign so they don't use a nuke. Now, that's unverified. I don't know that that's true. It's kind of hearsay gossip, but it's possible. It's possible if you listen to Steve here.
And I don't mean the B-2s coming in and taking out the caves. They relied upon our 1970s technology of cruise missiles fired from submarines in the North Arabian Sea to take out the above ground. We had to bring that war to conclusion, and President Trump and his brilliance said, we'll do that, and we'll call it the 12-day war, and it's over. Now, for the Israel First crowd, they are the ones that are destroying Israel. Today in Miami, who's negotiating with Witkoff? It's the Turks, it's Qatar, it's the Egyptians. Because Qatar is going to underwrite Gaza, and 2 million Palestinians are going to stay there. And the Turks are providing on Egyptian soil called Gaza, or on Israel soil called Gaza, is going to provide the military control mechanism over UAE troops, Saudi troops, and Egyptian troops. That's a two-state solution that has been provided because of the efforts of the Israel First crowd. And Charlie Kirk had one simple thing that he thought about. Who controls America and who makes decisions for the United States of America? And Charlie Kirk...
I kind of didn't understand what he was saying right there, but he said that it's kind of the Israel First crowd that now there's going to be a two-state solution. Because I didn't get that at first, but...
Worked overtime because behind the scenes he was a player, not just helping Sergio get all types of great people in there and vet those people, but actually talking about policy. And part of that policy was no more foreign wars.
Okay, so all this does is raise more questions about the death of this guy when you listen to Steve Bannon laying this out, doesn't it? Interesting.
Charlie absolutely believed what I believe. The Middle East is a sideshow, and Israel's a sideshow to a sideshow. Now, voices out there that support Israel, like Laura Loomer and Rabbi Walicki and others, are coming forward and say, look, Maybe Bannon and these guys are right. We don't want to take any more American money. We don't have any more American control. We want to go out and do what we want to do when the Israelis feel they have to do it. I support that 100%. Israel needs its sovereignty. Israel needs to be independent. If Israel wants to take on Syria, go for it. If Israel wants to go in.
That's all fun and games, Steve, until they get mired in something where they're being completely obliterated, and then we have to go in and help. That's a little bit of a naive way to look at it, but hey, whatever you got to do, I guess, to work around these lobbies.
In Lebanon, go for it, but not drag the United States of America into another endless war.
Okay, we're going to stop there, but this is what I want to say about this. And that is the reason this dynamic is occurring is because of the Trump administration. If the Democrats had won this past election cycle, none of this would even be on the table. And so I give the MAGA people props for that. And I think a lot of my friends on the left are like trying to dunk all over the Trump people now in the MAGA movement because they're like, oh, well, see, it's not working out. Ha ha, you got fooled again. And it's like, it's not that simple, unfortunately, guys. Like there's a lot at play here, and there's a lot of people embedded in the state that will do everything in their power, scratch and claw and fight to stop the status quo from changing even the slightest, you know? And again, maybe some of these changes aren't good. I'm not arguing that everything that they're trying to do is good, you know? Clearly with a lot of the ICE stuff, it's not good. If a lot of these stories, and I don't even know how much of that stuff is true, but it's not a good look, you know? It doesn't make us look like compassionate people by any stretch. By the same token, it's enforcing laws that I think any other country would enforce. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but could I go tomorrow to like Germany and like get a job in a parking lot at Home Depot and just live there under the radar, unaccounted for as an undocumented worker? Could I do this could Americans go be undocumented in any other country? You know what I mean? Without the law coming down on them? I don't think so. I don't think, I mean, I'm sure there are places, and I'm sure Americans have privilege sometimes, maybe that other people don't, but anyone I talk to from Europe, in fact, I talked to a guy the other day from Spain, a student from Spain, and he was even saying, he's like, I agree with a lot of the stuff that the Trump people are doing. And he was a liberal dude, from Spain. So, anyway, I think to close that out, the Steve Bannon thing was really the kind of final nail in the Ben Shapiro coffin there. And I don't think that wing of the party really has any credibility anymore. And I think they see that. I think Turning Point, it's smart of them to grab the bull by the horns, because if you've watched any of their talks recently or seen, I saw this kid asking Eric Trump and his wife about this, so that they're hearing it, and people like Tucker Carlson have a direct line to the White House. So that it's a wrestling match right now, and it's interesting to watch. So that aside, let's get into journalism and European stuff right now. I saw this tweet recently, and it was about what's going on in Europe with the Ukraine. And this is from Shay Bose. Let's just watch this for a second here. So you said that Russia should repay for reconstruction of Ukraine. Do you believe Israel should repay for reconstruction of Gaza? This journalist was dismissed from his position after posing this question to the EU chief spokesperson. Let's listen.
That Russia should repay for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Do you believe Israel should repay for the reconstruction of Gaza, since they have destroyed almost all the strip and the civilian infrastructures? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriele. It's definitely an interesting question on which I would not have any comment at this stage.
Kaya Kallis, so I was saying Kaja Kallis. I wanted you to see this because, of course, that guy She didn't make any comment, but this guy was dismissed from his position for asking that question. And that goes to another piece of recent journalism I came across, which I think is relevant to the current conversation that we're having. And it starts here with, I wanted to show you this in context because this is how I saw it. Dr. Jill Stein, who, had I voted in the last election cycle, I would have voted for. But still a hero fighting for us. The assault against him was a harbinger of the bipartisan attack on free speech. No lies told, press, privacy, and protests currently underway. Kudos to all who fought for his freedom. Don't stop now. We're all in the target hairs. And so what you can see, and this is why I kind of started with what I did earlier with this this battle that's currently being waged in the Republican side between the establishment and the insurgent MAGA movement is this. You notice the dynamic hasn't changed among uniparty people. When the Biden administration was in charge, they were trying to censor people who were talking bad about COVID or talking bad about, and now that the Republicans are in, they're using they're using a certain country in the Middle East for this, or Ukraine. It's less obviously so with Ukraine because the Trump administration's policy on Ukraine is they want the war over. But here's what's going on here. Julian Assange filed criminal complaint against the Nobel Foundation over Instrument of War Peace Prize. Let's read this full tweet here. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has filed a criminal complaint under Swedish law against the Nobel Foundation and 30 of its officials, alleging that awarding the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado constitutes misappropriation of the prize and facilitation of war crimes. Key points. Complaint names the Nobel Foundation chair Astrid Soderberg Whitting and executive director Hanna Stjarma. Assange argues the award violates the explicit will of Alfred Nobel, seeks a freeze of $1.18 million in pending prize funds and return of the medal, claims Machado's public advocacy for U.S. intervention in Venezuela is disqualifying under Nobel's peace criteria, cites U.S. military buildup and alleged resource concessions totaling $1.7 trillion, requests formal investigation, asset freezes, and potential ICC referral. Assange argues the prize is being used as a political instrument to legitimize war, not peace. 1000% accurate. And this got me wondering about what's going on with Sweden. And your boy Jackson Hinkle, I don't know if you remember Jackson Hinkle, but he's been back on YouTube recently. YouTube has kind of reneged, I guess, a little bit on their worst censorship policies, and so they've got him back on, and he's been doing some great work. And so he had this Swedish journalist on who I thought was actually really great, and I want to show you some clips from this interview that they did because she talks a little bit about the kind of co-opting of Sweden by the US. And I thought this was quite interesting and worthy of discussion. So let's start right around here. Here you go. Her name is Kajsa Ekman, I believe. Yeah, Kajsa Ekman. A lot of Kajsas.
It might be a case of like once they started and the politicians that we have invested so much of their political capital in this, it's difficult to do like a 180 turnaround and all of a sudden say, you know what, we don't care anymore. Because the past 3 years, I mean, all we've heard about is, Putin is coming, like Sweden is next, he will invade us. It's not as crazy as it was in the beginning. Like in the beginning, all the local Facebook groups were filled with people saying, where can we hide? And this was actively encouraged by our politicians, by our companies.
It's interesting. Quick sidebar here, because I come from the world of, computer shit, I guess is a good way to put it. And one of the things I think is interesting is you'll notice, if you remember the Cambridge Analytica thing, when they said that, the Trump people use Cambridge Analytica to like brainwash the public through Facebook, and that's how they won. After that, the government realized, hey, we can use Facebook to propagandize the shit out of people. And that, what she was just talking about there, is a good example. In Sweden, they used Facebook groups and Facebook propaganda, I'm sure, to get these Europeans on board with American wars. And so it's interesting. I think that the way that the world has changed, you know, we see this dynamic. A lot of us who were against the Iraq war see this dynamic where it's like, wow, all the liberals have somehow been duped into supporting war now. And this is how, through social media, because the propaganda is much, much more intense and targeted and to your likings through social media. It's not just showing it on CNN.
Where you went, you know, there was a Ukraine flag. And as opposed to the like solidarity with Palestine, which came from below, which came from, you know, ordinary people going out on the street, you know, this was clearly from above, like very much from the authorities, the companies are.
Interesting point she made there, that the Ukraine war kind of effort and the support was from the top down, whereas, you know, the reverse is true for the Gaza
politicians, our media. There was a study shown that the headlines of our main newspaper, Expressen, has been to 86% about Putin these years. I mean, it's not even about Ukrainians. It's about Putin himself. But I suggest once the US money dries up, you know, I don't know if our politicians are actually going to find it in their interest to go on with this. Because if, you know, we couldn't win this with US money, how are we going to do it without? I mean, I think even they are going to see that. So we're going to see, like, I think a slow kind of descent from this.
I hope so. Unfortunately, the U.S. just approved another $400 million for Ukraine against Trump's wishes, I guess. But I guess that leads me to the next question, because in Europe, across Europe, you see widespread economic issues. At least as an outsider, I'm looking at this. This is what I see being reported. Have the people kind of woken up to this? Are there any politicians, like in America, we have a lot of, I guess, right-wing politicians that don't want war with Russia? Have any politicians in either the left or right kind of made their mark and legitimately spoke out against this?
No. No. Wow. Not in my country. Like, you have to understand that, like, we come from 200 years of neutrality. Mm-hmm. Like, we weren't in any of the big wars. We weren't in the First World War. We weren't in the Second. We weren't in the Cold War. We weren't in any of that. And this was great policy for us. I mean, we let everybody else mind their own business. And we were just trying to do diplomacy. So Sweden, like during the 60s and 70s, was like a humanitarian superpower, you know, during like Olof Palme era. So we would advocate for things, but we wouldn't get into conflicts. Mm-hmm. Now with the Ukraine war, this all changed. So because Finland joined NATO, Sweden just like went along with it, you know, and there was no debate. Like generally when we do big things here, like joining the EU, or when we were about to join the Eurozone, which we didn't because we had a referendum, we said no. You know, there's debates everywhere, like on TV, you have for and against. But now there was like nothing. I mean, even in the Social Democratic Party, that, you know, actually decided on joining the NATO against their own party program, there was no debate. Also, the ex-Nazi party, which is supposed to be all nationalists, I mean, the Sweden Democrats, also made this like turnabout and said, yeah, we now love NATO. So it's really strange right now. Like, I don't really recognize my country, like the country that I grew up in with a big welfare state. Now, more and more money is going to go to military buildup, going to NATO. I mean, hospitals are suffering, schools are suffering. You know, it's just really sad.
That's interesting, because Scandinavia was long known for being, you know, the country that had a social safety net, and through social media propaganda, they've whipped the people into being pro-war and diverting their economic resources towards that without really, it sounds like, any kind of debate is what she's saying. But I definitely encourage you to go watch this whole interview, but let me jump up to the part where they talk a little bit about Venezuela now, because it's very interesting. It's not even that much further up here, but
about. Now, when it comes to Venezuela, I have to say this is like the strangest buildup of an invasion that I've ever seen. Because usually when the U.S. is about to invade a country, like, they try to convince everybody. So at the end of the day, if you don't like tie yourself to a mast like Odysseus, you know, in Homer, you're almost convinced yourself. Like, you know, it's either a crazy dictator that you have to take down now, or he's going to kill everybody, you know, or there is like weapons of mass destruction, the women are suffering, like whatnot. So they even, like in the Libya case, they managed to convince even the left. You know, you had like heavyweight left-wing people who were like, well, you know, there is the Arab Spring. But now nobody's buying into this drug thing. Like, even like, you know, respected business newspapers are open, like, this is about oil. So you know, this could mean two things. Like, either this whole thing is a big
I want
bluff.
to stop here, because on Jimmy Dore's show the other day, someone made a comment, and Basically, the comment was the reason that they're going after Venezuela and trying to control the flow of oil there is because if they start a war with Iran, Iran will lock up the Strait of Hormuz and the oil supply to the West. And Jimmy kind of like balked at it at first. And to Jimmy's credit, you know, I love Jimmy so much. Props to Jimmy, because eventually someone came in the comments and kind of explained it to him, because he's like, that doesn't make any sense. At first, I don't think he understood what the guy was saying, but it made a lot of sense. And because, like she's saying, it's like, what is this? It's so weird, but it's also obvious for a lot of reasons that Venezuela supplies oil to countries like China and India. So the U.S. wants to tie up. I mean, that's part of what they did with Ukraine. If you remember, they attacked that. They blew up that Nord Stream pipeline, so Russia couldn't supply Germany with natural gas anymore, and then they had to start buying it from the U.S. Well, everyone is still buying Russian energy just through middlemen now. You know, China or India is buying it and reselling it at a markup. So it's just stupid. And I love this. I asked my relatives, my relatives, like she said, the propaganda isn't about supporting Ukraine. It's about Putin. They use Putin as the demon to scare people. And that's why you're not allowed to listen to anything he says, because that's their whipping post. That's the cudgel that they're using to get you to support this. Oh, he's going to take over all of Europe. No, he's not. He didn't even make a move. There's so much about this that I won't get into right now. Let them finish, because they make a couple more interesting points here.
They're not going to invade. They're doing this, to get some power in the negotiations with Maduro. Or, which I think is scarier, Trump doesn't care what we think. Like the brute force itself is the argument. Like that is the soft power. Like he doesn't need to tell us, we're the good guys. He doesn't care.
I don't think he does care, to be honest. Also, you got to remember, he can't run again. And they joke about him running again. There would be so much backlash to that. And it's so much easier for him to put in someone that he trusts, like a JD Vance, like Obama did with Biden, and control it from behind the scenes if you want, or the MAGA people that are making decisions. But it is interesting to me, this whole Venezuela thing. Like I said, the other day, everyone was, I believed it, that he was going to announce it when he did that speech. So it's telling that he didn't, because again, I think it illustrates, and I'm going to show you in a minute, there's a power struggle going on between the status quo and the MAGA people that came in with Trump.
But if that's so, why is he taking so long? Like, why is he not doing this blitzkrieg thing? Because now Venezuela is like about to prepare, they're bringing out all the people and listing everybody. Like, why give them so much time? So this is what I don't really understand. Like, I don't know what you think about it.
I really don't know. I mean, I think the weirdest thing is Chevron accounts for 25% of daily oil output in Venezuela already. And Maduro said, I hope that Chevron can operate here for 100 years.
Yeah.
But it's the U.S. that blocks Chevron and other companies from having large-scale oil production rights and drilling rights in Venezuela because of the sanctions.
So this is the thing about that. Like, you have to see this whole thing as a conflict between Chevron and Exxon, right?
So this is really good. Listen to this right here. This chick is amazing. He breaks down what the issue in Venezuela is right here, and it's very, very fucking on point.
When Hugo Chavez came to power, like they changed the way that foreign companies could operate in Venezuela. So now a foreign company that comes in has to do a joint venture with a state company, PDVSA, right? And Chevron accepted that. So of course it was in their interest, they're making lots of money, but Exxon did not accept that. So they had some of their assets confiscated. And this is the thing. So Exxon's like really hardline. They're behind a lot of these think tanks that are convincing the Trump administration to go in there. Because right now, because of the sanctions, Venezuela is, I think it's the country.
There you have it. That's the power dynamic. That's the status quo. What she just said, those think tanks that control Washington, the people that have historically controlled the dialogue and the debate, are those think tanks. And that's what the MAGA people and the Steve Bannons and the Charlie Kirks are up against here. And they're so powerful, they've got the Marco Rubio fucking surrounding Venezuela And I have to wonder if it isn't like the Tulsi Gabbard Trump part of the movement who's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We'll saber rattle, but we ain't starting a war, guys. It would be disastrous.
With the biggest known oil reserves in the world. So, and before Chavez came to power, you know, half the people were in poverty. So obviously, like there's something not right about that. Now, the U.S. of course has a history of, you know, not accepting when, you know, you want to change things, when a popular president comes in and wants to, you know, fight poverty, wants to take control of the assets. So because of the sanctions, 80% of the Venezuelan oil is now sold to China. So I think the U.S. here has a choice. Like you listen to
80%. So again, it sounds like their goal is to maybe choke off the oil supply to China in some way. I mean, it's I don't know. I'm just speculating.
Chevron or Exxon, like either you do business with Venezuela on their terms, you know, or you do the old imperialist thing where you just go in and, you know, like kill the leader and put in like a Nobel Prize winner. That seems to be the plan.
And if 80% is sent to China, India maybe takes a little, maybe there's like a small consortium of other countries that take a tiny, tiny bit of it. That means that the vast majority is not on the petrodollar, which I think probably scares the US the most, because given Venezuela doesn't actually export, refine, process a lot of their oil right now, you said they have the most. I think it's like 17 to 20% of global oil reserves. Imagine what would happen to the petrodollar if all of Venezuela's oil was being exported at a normal rate and processed at a normal rate, and the vast majority is on the petro yuan or going to BRICS countries. Like that's got to be, I think, probably the biggest issue here, right?
Yeah, you think that's the reason that they're now focusing on Venezuela, like the whole bigger scheme, currency scheme?
Yeah,
it could be.
I think that's a big thing.
So anyway, I thought that was very telling. Jackson Hinkle is killing it. Back on the YouTubes for you. And this brings us to another, you know, kind of proof I think I have about this dynamic that's going on between the status quo and, you know, the kind of insurgent MAGA people, so to speak. And that is this new proposal that they've kind of put forward on war laws, and so Kim Iverson, I think this was missed by a lot of people, but Kim Iverson kind of has been on top of this, and I need to do a better job collecting my clips before, because when I try to run YouTube live, it just really slows my stream down. So forgive me for the choppiness if it's choppy, but this is how we got to do it today. We're working without a net.
Trump is saying that the administration is supporting the repeal of 2 AUMFs, so the Automatic Authorization of Military Force, 1991 and 2002 use for military force. Really interesting. So he put out this actual document here. And this whole statement basically saying that the administration completely agrees with the current NDAA, that they'll sign it today as is, that they like certain things. It's one of the main paragraph here that I want to highlight says, importantly, the NDAA codifies aspects of over a dozen executive orders and actions taken by President Trump, including those focused on warfighter lethality, advancing homeland missile defense by fully supporting the Golden Dome for America plan, restoring America's airspace sovereignty, and providing federal recognition of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina. Additionally, the NDAA is aligned with the president's historic commitment to peace and ending forever wars.
Did you hear that? Providing federal recognition of the Lumbee tribe of North Carolina? That sounds a little woke, Trump admin. Sounds a little woke to me.
By repealing the 1991 and 2002 authorizations for use of military force. Okay, so that's kind of unexpected, especially as he's over there bombing Iran and potentially, bombing boats in Venezuela, potentially waging war with Venezuela. Seems like he's waging wars without congressional approval. So
now here's my speculation on this. I'm going to give you that because that's what I do. Couple things. First, the current Iran bombing campaign and the Venezuela thing, I think, are not Trump's idea. he did very clearly run on, you know, no more foreign wars. And so I think maybe Rubio told him that if they saber rattle and surround him, he'll like Maduro will leave and then they can put someone in. And when it didn't work, Trump's like, no, dude, we're not starting a war. Who knows? But so far he hasn't actually started war. Now, I'm not apologizing for it because the shit that they're doing is climbing an escalatory ladder. Obviously, they're surrounding them. They're creating an environment where an event can occur that could start a war. So I'm not giving them a pass here. What I am saying is there's very clearly forces wrestling with each other behind the scenes on this kind of stuff. And the other aspect of them repealing this AUMF is it's kind of a giant fuck you to the neocons, and then gives them an out when, you know, Netanyahu shows up and says, hey, you know, I want you to do a war on this country or whatever. He's like, hey, we repealed the AUMF. I can't just do that anymore. It has to go through Congress now. Good luck. So who knows? I'm overthinking and overanalyzing here, of course, but these are my personal kind of thoughts on why this might be the case.
What do you think is behind this desire? I mean, this is a win for a lot of us. A lot of us have wanted to see these repealed. I mean, this is kind of interesting. What do you make of this?
Well, it's a win for America. It's a win for democratic control, foreign policy, small d. So I think it's good. I think it should be celebrated. I think there was an impression that these things were permanent and unlodgeable, just not movable. So I think we should celebrate it. I mean, the idea that we still had the Gulf War one designation on the books when we fought a second Gulf War, I think it's just a farce. And I think the O2 AUMF is one of the worst pieces of legislation in American history. The Iraq War authorization, and so deserves to be expunged from the history books, if only for pride's sake. So I think it's good, and I think it's good that the administration is not standing in the way, and I think it shows the relevance of a lot of the currents of realism and restraint that are ascendant in both parties, but in a lot of ways making very, very, very fast headway on the right, although it's not super obvious when the administration is saber rattling against Venezuela and Iran. So
well, and it just
yeah, and like I said, I think the reason for that kind of like bald-faced hypocrisy is because of this dynamic that's at play where you have these different factions kind of trying to wrestle for the power. And I mean, it's very clear that someone like Marco Rubio is a tool of the establishment. He was anti-Trump. You know, he's a guy that they put in there to drive policy the way they want it. You've seen, I'm sure, all the recent stuff about Susie Wiles. And yeah, she helped Trump get in there, but by the same token, she's there. As Bannon said a little bit in his speech, I don't know if I played all that, but he talks about how there is a war going on and they're trying to prevent MAGA from, they think Trump is a passing thing. And once he's gone, they can go back to business as usual with a Ted Cruz or a Marco Rubio, a stock and trade neocon, you know, uniparty tool who will do these things. So, you know, this to me is just another sign that, hey, it takes time, but maybe things are moving in the right direction. And with that, I want to talk about one of our banner stories of the day, which is the legalization of marijuana. Now, I'm going to show you a couple different takes on this, but to me, this is what it comes down to. And I think probably one of the reasons Trump did this is they are going to move marijuana from a Schedule 1 drug to a Schedule 3 drug. Now, what this does at its core is it makes cannabis business legitimate. Because right now, the way that it works, if you don't know anything about the cannabis industry, which I know a lot about it, being a almost lifelong pothead, we're all dumb and amotivated, by the way. That's a joke. But basically the problem now, if you run a cannabis business, you can't accept credit cards or bank cards or anything like that because banks are dicey about the legality of it. You know, it might be legal on the state level, but the feds can still come in and fuck with you because it's a Schedule 1 drug. Moving it to Schedule 3 erases that and immediately opens the doors for cannabis business. So the economics of this are going to be fantastic. And you can see, again, this isn't an issue where the forces of the status quo are fighting desperately to keep this from happening. You know, a lot of Republicans were against this, and to Trump's credit, he used the medical argument. But I think low key, it's him and his sons, they're they're hip dudes. They're connected. There's a business. They probably know guys who have chains of marijuana stores in Florida or something like that, you know. And especially in Florida, there's a lot of elderly people who probably use cannabis to actually medicate and for joint pain or that kind of thing. So I want to start here with just kind of the mainstream reporting on this and the way that they cover it, because even to them, they're kind of like, oh, well, it's not really final yet. Like it's still kind of like something that they're thinking about. Oh God. So this is from Scripps.
Tell us what the White House is saying and what the reasoning was behind this.
Yeah, Del, the basis behind this is for medicinal purposes and research purposes. What the president is instructing is eventually the reclassification of marijuana from a Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 substance, which opens up its use for medical purposes. This is something the president indicated in his remarks he had heard significant feedback on. This is something that had been anticipated, something he previewed going back to the campaign trail. And we understand from senior administration officials that what this executive order he is signing does is direct the attorney general to speed up that reclassification process and directs officials to work with Congress when it comes to opening up access for CBD, particularly for seniors. So this is something that is significant. The CMS head, Dr. Oz, also announcing new steps in the line of opening up access for seniors to CBD. This is one portion, though, of what the president was pressed on in those remarks, Dow. This also comes as Americans are facing the potential increase in premiums with the expiration of ACA subsidies and no consensus in Congress on a path forward for a new health care plan. The president, when pressed on this, doubling down that he wants to see money go to Americans and not the insurance companies, though not delving into the specific details on that front, Dow.
And before I let you go, so that the audience that doesn't understand the difference between Schedule 3 and Schedule 2, et cetera, this doesn't mean that you're going to see marijuana shops popping up along the Beltway or whatever highway you might decide to frequent, correct?
Correct. The president very clear this does not change its recreational use. And so that is something he was very firm.
It does. And I think these are news channels that take ad money from alcohol companies and big pharma. So you have to remember their slant is kind of catered to their advertisers. But I think, this idea, this is the thing about America that's so frustrating to me, is that we allow ourselves to be so fucking childish on things like this. Like prostitution is another one where it's like, okay, everyone smokes pot already. You guys are not going to get rid of it. And you've created this really stupid kind of like unserious infrastructure around it where some states can put you in jail for it still. And, it's not federally legal, but it's legal at the state level. And it's pretty obvious that it's, benign for the most part, unless you're a dipshit. And there are a lot of people that use it as an excuse to be lazy, just like they use anything as food or alcohol. But same thing with the same dynamic with prostitution, right? It's like, it should be legal and safe for consenting adults to do it. It's been around since fucking Bible times. You're not going to get rid of it, whether you like it or not, or think it's moral. Of course it's not moral, whatever. It's not a Christian thing or whatever, but it's a reality. And this like childish mentality that America has had for years of like, oh, we're just going to ignore this and pretend like it's going to go away and just keep doing things the way we've been doing them it's stupid. And one of the arguments I saw, what was so funny when I posted about this on TikTok, is people are like, yeah, Trump's just signing the thing that Biden already did. And I'm like, okay, well, why didn't he finish it? You know what I mean? Because that is what the Democrats historically have done. Obama was the master of this, where they do this thing half-assed and then get all the PR press from it. Like, see, Obama's great. And then they'd quietly repeal it. Like they did a whole thing where they were like, we're going to repeal insider trading. And they totally did. And then the day of the Boston Marathon bombing, Congress quietly removed it. So that's what Biden did. If you remember, they made a big deal about like, oh, Biden's signing a thing that's going to, they did the same thing with student loans. They like half-assed did it where some people got some money back, but the courts shot down most of it. You know, so it takes, again, going back to this argument that there's these like status quo forces clawing and fighting to keep everything the same. You're going to see the same dynamic here. There's a big, huge amount of cash flow that goes to law enforcement and DEA people to like fight marijuana. And that's going to go away if this becomes decriminalized. And so those people are going to fight and claw to keep things the same, just like anything. And with an administration like the Trump administration who's trying to like actually change things on multiple fronts, I'll give them credit. You know, the the Democrats are the type of people who have always ran on being able to change things, and then they get in and they fold to the status quo forces. And I might not agree with everything that the Trump people are doing, but at least they're trying. You know, at least they're making honest efforts to say fuck you to the powers that be that have fucked things up so badly, like this war state. It's like, dude, if you listen to the majority of the America First people, they're like, why would we keep doing things that we clearly are not in our best interests? Why do we, like, Afghanistan and Iraq is, you can look at that and go, what the fuck was that? That was highway robbery. And Ukraine is the same goddamn thing. I call it Ukrainistan. It's fucking highway robbery of the American people, but they, through, like I said, Facebook and modern propaganda tactics, have convinced the left to support a war because Putin, Putin, he's so terrible. We just had the fucking guy from Saudi Arabia who bonesaws journalists at the White House, and none of you were crying about that. But Putin is so bad, you know? It's fucking pathetic, and it's sad. And it's one of the reasons I am not on Facebook. So here's what Hakeem Jeffries had to say, and this actually surprised me a little bit. I'm sorry that I'm actually showing you this, because Hakeem Jeffries is definitely not a charismatic person.
This is sort of a two-part question. First, what is your reaction to Trump's executive order rescheduling marijuana? And sort of part two to that is, do you anticipate that bumping into some of the regulations that came in the continuing resolution about hemp-related products?
We'll have to see how the language in the continuing resolution that was inserted.
I need to see what my donors think before I comment on this.
As I understand it, by Senator Mitch McConnell, is reconciled with this particular executive order. More broadly, and I haven't had the opportunity to review the executive order, but I've supported marijuana reform throughout my entirety in public service, both in the New York State Legislature and as a member of Congress, and have worked with the administration in the past to get criminal justice reform over the finish line, connected to the First Step Act.
The First Step Act was Trump.
And we welcome any opportunity moving forward to continue that work, to right-size our criminal justice system.
So, I love this. Like, this is such an Obama era thing where you just completely change the subject. Like, you're just like, I love criminal marijuana. Oh, yeah, I love criminal justice reform. Yes, I've been an advocate for criminal justice reform. Well, that wasn't really the question, dude, but okay. So here is probably what the most important source on this story has to say. And my computer is very slow, so going to give me just a second to cue this up. But this is Trump from High Times. Listen to this. And this is him at the White House with a bunch of doctors.
But a lot of people do want it. A lot of people need it. And thank you, Howard, for really opening a lot of eyes. Okay, we'll sign it. We'll take some questions from the press. You can ask the doctors some questions. And it's an honor to do this. That's a good one. We rate that.
I wish I had another TikTok clip from the press conference, but I'll just kind of relate to you what happened before we move on to this next one. Basically, someone was asking him, one of the press was asking him about why he was doing this, and he kind of pointed to some doctors behind him and just said, look, I'm not the expert. These doctors are telling me that there are medical uses for cannabis, so that's why we're doing this. And I think, like I said before, a lot of it is more the business side of it, low key. He's not going to come out and say that. He's going to use the medical excuse because that's been the argument for a long time as to why it's not legal is, oh, it doesn't have any medical uses. But if you can prove that, then you have a valid argument to make, And so there's one more person who, again, this is kind of my proof that this is a business thing. A big low-key Trump supporter has always been Mike Tyson, who is a New Yorker and, probably fought at Trump's casinos quite a bit. Also a huge advocate for marijuana, and guess what? Has his own cannabis-related business. So here's what he has to say about this. And I think low-key, like I said, I think he is one of the people probably who lobbied the president for this on the backside.
I'm looking at me as the product of cannabis. I'm using everything else. I'm using acid, using cocaine, using alcohol, whatever I could take. And this is the product of all that. I gave it up with cannabis.
Do you have any plans to lobby in any other states?
All over the world, and all over the country. Any place that I could talk and people listen, I would say.
Have you met with lawmakers anywhere else before?
All over the country. I spoke to people. I spoke to the president about this. Everyone that was willing to listen and give me a platform.
What did the president tell you?
Well, I've talked to him about it before. And then one particular time he actually called me and discussed to me about the rescheduling of it. And I said, when you happen to do that, I would like to be there. And he said, yeah, you'll be there if I have to make that decision.
Governor Shapiro is.
So there you have it. Mike Tyson, you heard it here first. That's my scoop of the day. Mike Tyson advocated for the rescheduling of marijuana. And I think, like I said, Trump listens to people that are close to him. And I know that Tyson is one of those dudes who, despite the liberal backlash, was an early Trump supporter because he knows the guy. And despite his flaws, probably has had good experiences with him. So that is very good news. And I'm really happy about that. And I don't think it's really been talked about much because of all the other stuff that's been going on in the political realm. Of course, the wars, the escalations, the ops. So with that, I want to talk about one last thing before we kind of close out for the day. And that is this recent shooting in Australia. And of course, the way that the war state works. And I think this tweet is kind of relevant because I think this mentality really sums me up as sums up my political mindset, because this is the era that I come from, the Iraq war era, right? And this is Shea Bose. He says, last time they did this, only the Iraqis paid the price with the civilization-ending illegal war. Now they're trying it with the Russians, who have the most modern, combat-hardened, biggest army in Europe, not to mention nuclear arsenal. A very different outcome awaits. And the U.S., to its credit, is trying to remove itself from that conflict. And it's actually the EU who is trying to keep it going. And with that, I want to go to Alex from the Durin, who, did I lose that piece? Yeah, so I want to show you this because, again, this speaks to my argument that there is a power struggle going on in the Trump administration. And a lot of people miss this, I'm sure with good reason. I'm sure that, this was glossed over in a lot of media places for a lot of reasons. But this is Tulsi Gabbard at the TPUSA event. And listen to what she has to say here.
But what I've seen over these months
is that every time they make progress and they move closer and closer to that hope for peace, the warmongers in the deep state step up and try to do everything they can to stop them. Predictably, they use the same old tactics that they've always used. The deep state within the intelligence community weaponizes intelligence to try to undermine progress. They leak it to their friends in the mainstream propaganda media to try to spread this and push a false narrative. They foment fear and hysteria as a way to justify the continuing of the war and their efforts to undermine President Trump's efforts towards peace. And do so specifically in this case in order to try to pull the US military into a direct conflict with Russia, which is ultimately what the EU and NATO want. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to see clearly what's happening before our very eyes and stand united in this cause of peace.
This is my video up.
So again, I'm going to let Alex talk here, but this speaks to the dynamic I've been talking about. There is definitely a power struggle going on, and I think the MAGA people are starting to come out on top. And you see this reality with the fall, the uncloaking, if you will, of a Ben Shapiro. You know, he's long wielded, and Mark Levin. I couldn't believe that when Steve Bannon said Tel Aviv Mark Levin. These guys have been exposed. They're the agents of the status quo. Like Bannon said, Shapiro was a never Trumper. He was a Ron DeSantis guy. Rubio was one of Trump's opponent. Ted Cruz, all these assholes who are never Trumpers. This is why. This is the clear dividing line between the MAGA people and the establishment Republican Party. It's the one that matters anyway. The foreign war neocon dynamic. And the neocons had already kind of joined the Obama movement, as I've talked about many times. You have David Frum debating Steve Bannon about this as taking the liberal side. The neocons kind of comfortably in the Obama era went, oh, okay, we can do this over here. And then MAGA rose up and was like, no, we ain't having this. And again, it makes me, the trajectory, the political trajectory, despite the bumps in the road, is good, because this dynamic we're going to see here would not be playing out had Kamala Harris won.
Date on this Sunday afternoon, December the 21st, coming to you from Athens, Greece. Let's talk about some news. And let's start things off with a report from NBC News, which claims that Netanyahu is going to meet with Trump in the next month or so, and he plans to brief Trump on a possible new Iran strike. According to Israeli officials, Iran is expanding its ballistic missile program. They are preparing to make the case during an upcoming meeting with Trump that it poses a new threat.
So you hear this, and then you hear the things that people like Tulsi Gabbard and Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson are saying on the stage at the most, popular conservative political event of the year. And it makes you wonder. Now Netanyahu's got to come over and have a talking with Trump. How many times has he been here this year already?
So we're going to have a new year, a new Iran threat, a new U.S. strike. Round 2 of the Iran-U.S.-Israel conflict.
Okay. So that said, quick sidebar here. I wonder if that speech that he gave a couple days ago was not a kind of fake out to the neocons. I wonder if they didn't tell a bunch of people, because if you remember, Tucker Carlson had said that someone in Congress told him, a source he has told him that this was going to happen, that Trump was going to announce war with Venezuela. So I have to wonder if the Trump people didn't say, okay, let's feed this rumor to a bunch of people and see who leaks it. You know what I mean? And then, because the likelihood of him, I thought this leading up to it with all the hysteria and the people were saying like, oh, he's going to announce war with Venezuela. I thought, wow, it will be pretty amazing if he does not announce war with Venezuela. And like Tulsi Gabbard was talking about the warmongers, it's almost like they put this narrative out there to hypnotize everyone. And then eventually the Trump people are like, yeah, I guess we're doing it. Yeah, war with Venezuela. Yeah, this is why we got to do it. But that cycle might be breaking. And I guess we're about to find out. But let's listen to Alex for a minute here.
Is according to NBC News. And from Iran, we go to Venezuela, where A tanker was seized yesterday. I'm not exactly sure of the location of the tanker, but according to Kristi Noem, the tanker was at one point in time docked in Venezuela, and it has now been seized by the U.S. Coast Guard along with assistance of the Department of War. And according to a post by Kristi Noem on X, the United States will continue to pursue the illicit movement of sanctioned oil that is used to fund narco-terrorism in the region. We will find you and we will stop you. So they seized the oil tanker, which is a Chinese-owned.
So again, you have to wonder, how much of these people are doing this autonomously. But let's jump forward just a little bit to right here, because there's another bit of interesting stuff in here I want to talk about.
Welt is running an article with the title, translated into English, Painful Truths, with a very sad-looking, Zelensky, Ukraine will lose the war against Russia. Europeans must admit this, even if it hurts. The only remaining goal is to prevent the worst. Owen Matthews of the Telegraph, who is a fanboy of Zelensky, or he was a fan of Zelensky. It seems like he's turned on Zelensky over the past couple of months, but he is super pro-Ukraine, as is the Telegraph super pro-Ukraine, as is German media Welt super pro-Ukraine.
I gotta say, I watch Alex's channel just because he's in Greece, and just to see like the beautiful Grecian backdrops on his stream. He always looks amazing there. I need to visit Greece.
But the Telegraph is running an article with the title, Europe has just failed Ukraine again, in reference to the Russian frozen assets, not being able to steal the Russian frozen assets. It would be better to negotiate peace than find ways to fund a war that Kiev is slowly losing.
There we go.
Now, Kiev is quickly.
So I wanted to show you this because apparently Europe is starting to grapple with the reality that it's over. And the U.S. this is another one of those things where Trump has tried to end this war with massive opposition from the status quo. And as Kaisa Eckert just told you on Jackson's stream about how Europe has changed over, like Sweden is diverting money into NATO now, instead of having a robust social safety net like it used to. It's almost like American neocon bullshit has kind of seeped into Europe via the EU and created the same dynamics we have here, where they used to be a bulwark against that kind of shit. And it's like, it'll be interesting to see how the healthcare thing plays out with the MAGA people, because I think Trump's better instincts really are to help, to do the things that he said he was into doing, as we saw with the cannabis thing, or even this Ukraine war. But again, he's up against a lot of pushback.
Losing the conflict and an admission that there is no money for the conflict. Even the 90 billion loan that, if you even want to call it a loan, that was agreed on in Brussels, really doesn't have much. There's not much details behind this loan that was agreed on, this 90 billion. So we really don't even know what this loan is about, how long this loan will last. Does it include the 40 billion loan from the G7? 24 countries said they're going to participate in this loan, but are they really going to participate in this loan? And what crazy investor would actually agree to take part?
So anyway, I just wanted to show you that the reality is Europe has pretty much accepted that this is over. And the idea that you would give a loan to people that you have just discovered are stealing money, literally, like they just exposed that like Zelensky's like right-hand man is like funneling on, and Congress still approved another like $400 million or $800 million or something ridiculous to send over there. That is how broken our system is, that even despite the people voting for this, the people voted to end the war, to stop the madness, stop sending money to criminals. And despite that mandate and the current administration, it being their policy, they still can't stop it. That's how fucking deep the tentacles of corruption are and bullshit in our system. And it's sad, but I'm also optimistic because I look around at what's going on and you see it people are shedding this left-right mentality and realizing this is totally all a ploy just to keep us mad at each other and keep us from having nice things. And so it's great to see, and to circle back, to come full circle back to the beginning of what we talked about today with Ben Shapiro. That is proof positive that it's over. It's over, Benny. The era of being able to prop yourself up with money and lie to the public is over. Like I said earlier, it's billions of dollars versus the truth, and the truth is going to win. We saw this dynamic with Mamdani. They spent all this money trying to smear him as like a Muslim terrorist or something leading up to the election. And I think like people from my generation on down are wise to this. And if I really want to point the finger at what caused this rift between the average like thinking person with a brain and the mainstream media, it was this one. Ain't that America? You and me. Ain't that America? After that shit show, even a lot of the most hardened liberals are like, yeah, I don't buy it. You know what I mean? Because listen, I was one of those people who thought Trump was a white supremacist and Tucker Carlson was a white supremacist, racist, and all this stuff. And then you listen to these people actually talk. They're trying to smear Candace Owens as a white nationalist. You saw that CNN interview. It's ridiculous. The woman's like, oh, you're using a white supremacist language. It's laughable at this point. It's so obvious that these people are lying. As Candace said with Ben, it's over. You're a worm. Crawl away on your belly. All the money in the world is not going to change it now. Keep throwing your billions at it. It's not going to work. People can see that you're full of shit. And I think with that, we're going to end with the full, unedited Ben Shapiro remix for you guys, because I like to take you out with something funny. We may do a 2025 recap in the near future, but thank you for joining me as always. I appreciate each and every one of you getting on and listening to me rant about politics. And I try to bring something to the table that's valuable, at least. I do my best to bring something to the table that's worth listening to. And I hope you appreciate that. And I hope you have a great holiday, however you celebrate it, whether you are a Merry Christmas person, Merry Christmas, whether you're a Happy Hanukkah person, Happy Hanukkah, whether you're a Kwanzaa guy or Diwali, which I think is over at this point. I don't give a shit. Just, be nice to people and be honest. And we'll see you next time. I got love for y'all. Peace, Slayer, all that good shit.
There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. There's some whores in this house. Hold up. I said certified freak. 7 days of the week. Wet ass P word. Make that pullout game weak. Yeah, you effing with some wet ass P word. Bring a bucket and a mop for this wet ass P word. Give me everything you got for this wet ass P word. Beat it up, N-word, catch a charge. Extra large and extra hard. Put this P word right in your face. Swipe your nose like a credit card. Hop on top if I want to ride. I do a Kegel while it's inside. Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes. This P word is wet, come take a dive. And it gets significantly more vulgar. Like a lot more vulgar. Talk your S word, bite your lip. Ask for a call while you ride that D word. This is guys, this is what feminists fought for. You really ain't never gonna F him for a thing. He already made his mind up before he came. Now get your boots and your coat for this wet ass P word. Pay my tuition just to kiss me on this wet ass P. Right, so P word is female genitalia. This is what the feminist movement was all about. It's not. It's not really about women being treated as independent, full, rounded human beings. It's about wet ass P word. And if you say anything differently, it's because you're a misogynist, you see.
This is the first ICBM used in the history of war. I'm sorry, in the history of this war. Oh, wait, any war? The view of the intercontinental ballistic missile used today by Russia with multiple re-entry warheads on a city in Ukraine It's possibly the first use of an ICBM in the history of war. Take a look at this. It is a beautiful, and by the way, send this to everyone as an e-card for Thanksgiving. Send it to them as an e-card for Thanksgiving. Take a look. Can you play non-copyrighted holiday music while this happens?
Yeah, I'll put it up on YouTube.
Because I think it's about attitude, and I think it's about the way we present something. I don't think it's about the raw facts. I think it's all the way you look at it. Perspective is reality. Is there a way to make Russia firing an ICBM, can we make it feel jolly? Can we make it feel nice? Do we have to focus on the negative aspects of it? You know, I mean, listen, remember when they were running articles in New York Times going, you know, nuclear war has some benefits and maybe everybody should get over their fear of nuclear war. And we're going to pull that article up in a minute, but they're genuinely sick people who are saying, well, nuclear war maybe wouldn't be the worst thing. So here we're going to play a little non-copyrighted Christmas music. Ooh, I like that. Now get the ICBM up. Well, this is nice. Now it feels like the Christmas show. This doesn't scare me anymore. It feels like a light show for the holidays. Keep playing that missile. I like this missile. This is a holiday missile. This is not a bad missile at all. What if they did it and it lit up the sky with like Frosty the Snowman? It's all about the way you look at it, folks. Nuclear war is a good reset. I think people in this country have decided in small rooms or in forests or wherever they meet and talk that nuclear war is actually a nice reset. It might get rid of a few of you mouth breathers who keep complaining you don't have enough money for canned food. All right, we'll get rid of this. Get that article up. I think it was from the New York Times because it's